All right, and it looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. This is My Two Cents. Welcome back to my channel, and let's just have a quick discussion about what's coming up here in the near future, both in America, worldwide, and of course for the future of my channel. Now, before we get started, I just want to let everyone know. I'm sure as many of you are aware, but if you haven't seen yet, a lot of prominent YouTubers have had their channels deleted, completely vanished. Recently, and especially any kind of independent commentator who talks about current events, economics, that kind of stuff, are seeing their channels disappear. I've been preparing for this a while. My Two Cents content is available, particularly on BitChute and library platforms. You can find the links to both on, if you go to mytwocentsvideos.com, I have the links to all of my alternative social media platforms in every blog post that's associated with a video. Now more than ever, it is important to get on those alternative platforms. Since I'm smaller than a lot of the YouTubers who have been purged so far, I think I'll be able to skate for a while, but it's pretty much inevitable at this point. YouTube will delete any kind of independent commentator that's not going along with their official state narrative. So time to get on those alternative platforms. And I see we've already got a few people showing up in the chat. BDRFCHFRGG says leave a like on the video. Yes, I would appreciate that. And JC Armitage, regular viewer, says sup. Hello, JC. How are you? So anyways, if you haven't been living under a rock, I'm sure everyone is aware that earlier this week there was a riot at the U.S. Capitol building in D.C. where a large number of Trump supporters, or at least we're told they were Trump supporters, stormed the Capitol building while the House and Senate were deliberating on certifying the election results. Of course, Orange Man Bad was blamed for all of this, even though he called on Twitter for violence to cease and to respect the Capitol Police, which led to eventually him being kicked off of Twitter and off of Facebook, which caused an extreme popularity surge in alternate tech, especially the Twitter alternative Parler, which then prompted Apple, Amazon, Google, and other major tech platforms to try and get rid of Parler. And now, of course, the regular conservative talking heads are talking about how dangerous social media is, how this proves the private free market argument doesn't work. We need regulation of social media. And of course, on the far left are crying out now that even though he only has 10 days left as president, we've got to impeach Donald Trump and get rid of him and, usher in the new era of being saved. This is all what the media is talking about. Of course, I'm not going to comment on most of that. For the record, YouTube censors, if you happen to be watching this later on, I am not a journalist. I do not conduct investigations. I am merely giving my 2 cents. It's what I do, and if you kick me off your platform for it, so be it. But what else is going on right now that nobody's really talking about? Well, as you can see, I've already got screen shared here. A chart that's showing the M1 money supply growth that has taken place in 2020. Now, this is a topic that I've really beat dead already on many of my past live streams. And that being, of course, that the Federal Reserve has been printing money like mad, but especially ever since the whole COVID-19 lockdowns. Money, 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 print, print, print. Money printers go burr, of course, because the federal government needs to fund itself. We need to fund all these stimulus checks that are going out and all the other payments to cronies and whatnot, even though the government has always been spending well more than it brings in taxes. The only option for the government to keep itself afloat at this point is just to print, print, print money. And of course, to appease the population, keep spending money out. Now, as anyone who understands basic economics knows, despite the fact that expert economists and politicians can delay this through various policies, particularly by creating uncertainty that prompts people to either hoard money or not spend it, or spend it all in the stock market, which is what they've been doing up to this point. Eventually, this process has to come to an end. Sooner or later, you print so much money that the currency becomes worthless and the U.S. dollar collapses. Everyone, the politicians and economists who are promoting this idea know it. It's simply a matter of how long can it go. But of course, nobody's talking about it right now because there are more pressing matters, like the fact that the evil man Donald Trump might destroy us all, even though he only has 10 days left in the presidency. Well, but does a Joe Biden presidency represent any departure from this kind of policy? Well, let's take a look, and we'll do it by sharing a different screen here. Give me a second. See, a couple more people are getting in the chat now. Welcome to all the new folks. All right, well, we see here the BBC published on 1 December 2020, Biden is talking about his nomination for the U.S. Treasury Secretary. Who is he thinking about nominating? Well, Janet Yellen, the former Fed chairman under Barack Obama. Another one who, in the vein of Ben Bernanke in the 2008 financial crisis, advocates the Fed printing more money in order to help keep America out of economic crisis. It's the same policy we've been doing forever, but especially that started in the 2008 financial crisis, and that has been extremely exacerbated ever since the whole COVID-19 crisis. So I just point this out. I mean, you could have surmised anyways. It doesn't matter who is in the White House, it doesn't matter who controls Congress. Two things always happen: federal spending increases, and the government grows in the size and scope of its authority. There was no mystery about any of this, but I just point out that the fact that Biden is nominating, or intends to nominate, likely Janet Yellen as the U.S. Treasury Secretary, goes to show that for those that thought Donald Trump was the savior of America, he was fundamentally against the political establishment and taking the country in a new direction. He was not. Fiscally speaking, economic policy, or, well, I should say monetary policy, has stayed exactly what it was under Barack Obama. In fact, Trump has made the matter worse. The national debt's higher than it's ever been. Money creation is higher than it's ever been. And Joe Biden will, of course, continue with this exact same policy. Nothing is going to change. Now, I see it's Scholasticelles has asked in the chat, how long before all this inevitably implodes? Again, it's difficult to predict with exact certainty when it will happen, but I will say right now it is my opinion that the U.S. government is seeking to keep global uncertainty as high as they possibly can to keep people from spending money and in a reopened economy. The reason at this point that there is still so much push to continue lockdowns is not because of COVID surges. It's not because some new strain of COVID was just discovered in the UK and all vaccinations are now possibly worthless. The reason the US is pushing for more COVID lockdowns and for more, talking about insurrection and other things that create uncertainty is because they want desperately to keep all this new money from flooding into the economy at once and collapsing the U.S. dollar. It's pretty much the only tool left they have in the box. The money's been created, and as can be said, once you squeeze the toothpaste out of the toothpaste container, you can't put it back in. The money's been created. It's out there. At this point, all the government can do is try to let it collapse on their terms in a manner that will be most advantageous for them, trying to solidify their control over the population, not possibly lose it if it happens at the wrong time. Now, I don't think it's a coincidence that this whole insurrection thing happens, and right about the time that it happens, suddenly there's a crackdown on alternative technology. Everyone on the political left is saying, well, clearly Parler and Gab and BitChute and all these alternative platforms are being used to advocate violence. I mean, never mind the fact that we've got the government of China, which is actively cleansing its Uyghur population. They're on Twitter, and they're allowed to tweet whatever they want, yet Donald Trump, the most evil man who's ever lived, is kicked out. And we're going to censor platforms like Parler and BitChute and all these others for advocating violence. They don't care about violence. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I just want to say, for those that are saying there are people, I think it's certainly true. But a lot of people have pointed out in the past week that people on the political left and the political right are now being very open about the fact that they believe that violence is an acceptable course of action for achieving their political ends. And I just kind of laughed when I read that because, well, it's true, but it's always been true. And here's the thing. Politics is by nature a violent game. The government, whether they're Republicans, whether they're Democrats, government uses violence to achieve its ends. The whole thing that makes a government, as Murray Rothbard so aptly pointed out, is the fact that it obtains its revenue not through peaceful voluntary transaction, but through coercion. So whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Democrat, if you are crying out now, I support this policy, but I condemn the violence, no. If you are a statist, if you believe government is legitimate, then you believe that it is acceptable to use violence to achieve your political ends. You just only believe certain people are allowed to do it, not these quote-unquote rogue groups. But let's get real. In any one of these rogue groups is no more legitimate than government. It's just the mass public opinion about the matter. So I'll get off my soapbox at that now, but it's just something worth being said. Another article to share here. Give me just a second. Okay, so the New York Times here admitting that job recovery, as it has been called, is now going into reverse. So ever since this April was the last time that job losses were officially reported, supposedly as a result of COVID-19. But ever since then, jobs have been being recovered. However, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, this December, 140,000 jobs were lost, when you consider the net gains and losses for jobs in the United States, 140,000 jobs were lost this time around. Well, of course, it's due to the fact that, COVID-19 is surging, the cases are rising, and more people are dying. Yeah, again, we've talked about this on previous streams. The economy was already in shambles. Production, when you consider the amount of businesses that are closed, the amount of businesses that are operating at less than full capacity, the amount of goods and services that are being produced, the economy can only be said to be in a total crap hole right now. For a while, it looked like the stock market was doing really well. And again, as I've explained, all this money they're printing essentially is just getting dumped into the stock market, which artificially makes it look like the stock market's doing really well, even though production is at an all-time low, businesses are doing horribly. That's all really the money printing illusion was creating. But now it's starting to catch, again, this kind of policy can't last forever. Sooner or later, supply and demand wins out. People realize that the goods and services they want aren't actually there, and the whole thing starts to fall and collapse, which is why then, of course, more global uncertainty is created, hoping that more people will stop spending money and give the government more wiggle room to keep printing money. Well, I would predict that after Biden takes office on January 20th, there will be reports coming out stating that this is being reversed. But of course, it's all going to be temporary. Sooner or later, this is going to collapse, and it's only a matter of time at this point. All right, well, and that is pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. Let's take a moment to go ahead and take a look at what comments are here. JC Armitage says, politics is terrorism. Changed my mind. I prefer to say politics is violence as opposed to politics is terrorism, but hey, not going to get an argument from me here. Litigious Society. Congressmen just do what they need to get reelected in their district. They generally don't care about the country as a whole or any big picture. Definitely true. That's why the whole push for $2,000 stimulus checks and everything else. Politicians will say whatever they need to get reelected. And not to steal, I should give credit because Styx Hexenhammer was talking about this on one of his videos recently, but I thought it was very elegantly said. I laughed really hard when I heard him say it. But a lot of people who haven't been to D.C., who haven't interacted with politicians, don't realize Republicans and Democrats alike, when the cameras are turned off and they're just talking to one another, they're pretty much all friendly with each other. They're all banging each other's interns. They're doing cocaine with each other in their offices. It's only when the TV cameras are on that they pretend to argue about policies. And afterwards, when the cameras are turned off, they hang out together. They do all that stuff I just mentioned together. They work with the large billionaire corporate class to make more money for themselves and push competition out of the market for those businesses. And then they laugh because and pretend to support whatever policies they want. They care about themselves. They care about their bottom line. They sometimes pretend to care about the poor, but make no mistake, they do not care about you and what you're really looking for at all. Scholastatelli says, how do we transition people from a white market to gray market work? Well, I think that transition will kind of happen naturally once the U.S. dollar collapses. But what you can do to prepare yourself right now is understand that any money you have saved is going to become worthless. It is of no good for you right now to have, Roth IRA, 401k, large amounts of cash in the bank. All that is going to collapse. You're better off owning property, real assets that you can trade, that you can utilize when the U.S. dollar collapses. Jigbar2 says, become a presidential candidate. You are our only hope. Thank you. I really do appreciate that, but there's nothing I can do to stop what's coming now. There's nothing any presidential candidate can do. The collapse was set in motion long ago. Jonathan O says, so what is the solution to social media censorship? Is it even a legitimate problem? Well, I would say this. I think for all especially the conservative commentators that are talking about, the fact that Apple and Google and all these other giant tech platforms can get rid of Parler shows that these tech corporations are too big. The private company free market argument doesn't work. We need regulation to ensure that our voices are heard. What they don't realize is that Apple and Google kicking Parler out of their stores is only a temporary fix to get rid of Parler, quote unquote. So long as there is a market for people wanting to share their opinions, and there is, make no mistake, an alternative means for those platforms to exist will arise. It won't be Google, it won't be Apple, but it will arise, and once the public has access to it, those platforms will start to grow exponentially. It's the people on the left and the politicians on the left and the right actually want the same thing. They want it to be the proper role of government to decide what social media platforms can exist. Facebook, Twitter, Apple, all these other companies, they will be the first to cheer on regulations that cause them to be more, supportive of alternative voices. You may not think so, but once, in order for a social media platform to exist, it needs government approval. Say hello to permanent social media monopolies. Apple, Google, all these platforms might seem huge and unbeatable right now, but I remind people, MySpace was said to be a natural monopoly in 2007. No corporation solely operating on free market voluntary transactions can guarantee its own existence forever. They have to sufficiently please the customers. And when there are enough customers not pleased who want apps like Parler, sure, Apple, Google, these major platforms, they can get rid of them temporarily by kicking them off. But so long as there's a market, an alternative hosting site for those platforms will arise, and all those people will be back on louder and more resolved than ever. Only if government steps in and starts passing regulations that control what social media platforms can and can't do with content on their sites will there be truly no way to escape the censorship. And private companies, however large they become, however much influence they have, they cannot force you to do anything, not without the help of the almighty government anyways. Star Raptor Flock says Parler is going to be back up soon. I agree. They do plan on getting new servers. Is paleo pertaining to paleo diet? I did not say paleo. I don't know if somebody else did in the chat. I think you're referring to Parler, the app. Speaking of MySpace, Trump should join it to revive it. Very well. Anyways, I will go ahead and take this, stop sharing my screen for a minute. All right, we've been going for about 20 minutes now. I did invite some of my patrons to come on, but it looks like they're too busy. Anyone have anything else they want to discuss before we cut this stream off? And of course, that will inevitably leave to some open air here because whatever I say, you guys don't hear it till later. There is a delay. We've got 33 people watching right now. That is pretty good for a stream. Libermer says cringe. I don't know if you're saying I'm cringe or what we're talking about is cringe. Lirim Iljazzy, end state protections, agreed. Wonder if for all the people who are talking about how we need more censorship of Facebook and Twitter and all these tech platforms because they're so big, does anyone ever ask the question how big they became, how they got so big in the first place? It certainly wasn't without government help. If you look at the amount of, the the amount of subsidies or tax breaks that these corporations get that their competitors do not. They're absolutely as big and powerful as they are because they've been propped up by the state. Grug says, I own a German Shepherd. Good for you. Good animal to have around the house. Litigious Society, 2 dogs. Not sure how the conversation turned to that, but hey, I love dogs. Absolutely have dogs, especially a dog like a German Shepherd that can protect your home. Jigbar 2, ANCAP is the only way. I couldn't agree more. Jonathan O, would you have supported the storm if they had a good cause? I'm not the storm, if you're referring to the storming of Capitol Hill, the whole thing about the storming of Capitol Hill, I'm not even inclined to believe that those were primarily Trump supporters. Obviously, I can't prove this. I'm simply speculating. It makes a lot more sense to me, though, that whole thing was orchestrated by powerfully placed politicians. I would say leftists, but in non-Trump Republicans as well, basically just to create the narrative that Donald Trump supported violence so that they could then call for the removal of Parler and try and help solidify the government's control over the spread of information. Hang on a second, I missed one. James Mule says, do you think these lockdowns is making people question the government? Yes, I think more and more people are, and if nothing else, that's a good thing. This whole election debacle, again, I've said in the past, I absolutely believe they've proven there was fraud. Was it enough to change the results of the election? I don't know, but if nothing else, at least it made people question the government, question whether or not they can actually affect change with their vote like they've been told. Capitalism is an anti-concept. JS is QBS. Is QBS or not? If you're referring to QAnon, I am not. I will say QAnon is definitely BS. I'll say this: QAnon. I haven't done in-depth research of QAnon, but a person that I know who is very into QAnon basically says they believe that the leader of Q is a prophet, and that prophet has prophesied that on January 20th, Donald Trump will become president again. Well, it's pretty clear at this point that is not going to be the case. If by some miracle it happens, I will stand corrected, but get real, that's not going to happen. If you're reading the same Bible as I am, the test for whether or not someone is truly a prophet is if even one of their prophecies does not come true, they are not really a prophet. So to all followers of QAnon, on January 20th, when Joe Biden is sworn in as the next president, do you intend to renounce your prophet as a false prophet? I mean, in the Old Testament, such a person was supposed to be stoned to death. Hang on, let me pull that quote down and then keep getting through these comments. Jigbar2 says you should make a video on private property rights saving elephants in Africa. Thanks for the suggestion, I guess. Spoof22, good time to recruit to help reconstruction people's minds. LOL, the Capitol Hill was clear CIA glow boy operation. I would not be surprised if they were involved. Again, if I can't prove something, I'm not going to say it for sure, but the CIA is all about misinformation and controlled propaganda. I mean, we all know they never actually supported that government that program to develop mind control, except now we know for sure they do. We all know that FDR was a total hero, except, oh wait, he actually had his own plan to exterminate the Jews. All declassified files, verified. J.C. Armitage says, about that insurrection, it's funny how the state wants us to give up our outlier guns, give up our guns, and rely on them for protection, yet they can't even defend their own main HQ from a bunch of unarmed Duck Dynasty rejects led by a guy in a Viking Chewbacca bikini, not even mentioning the fact they spent billions on defense. That is pretty hilarious, and I know the chief of the Capitol Police, as well as a number of other high-profile security professionals at the Capitol, have resigned since the little insurrection. But what I thought was funny is I've seen the videos, I'm sure you've seen them too, of Capitol Police officers basically just backing off, like they're trying to hold the line, prevent people from getting in, and then they just give up, throw their hands in the air and say, we're not doing this anymore, and let people in. Now, I don't know about you, but the whole thing stinks of this whole thing was planned so that, they could say Donald Trump encouraged violence, which he didn't. They can try to crack down on alt-tech platforms that were used to orchestrate this violence. The whole thing stinks to me. No one says, what happened to Vice President Pence? Did he actually betray Trump? I haven't looked into that a whole lot. I know Trump tweeted that Pence failed to do his duty by challenging the electoral vote, but Trump was going to say that no matter what. I mean, there are rumors Trump wants to run again in 2024, which, given the kind of guy he is, I wouldn't put it past him. And of course, if he is going to, he's going to want to keep up this whole narrative of the election was stolen from me, try to rally his base even more. Personally, I think the economic collapse is going to come before that can happen, but I could be wrong. They could hold it off even longer. The irony being, the longer the government successfully holds off the collapse, the worse it is going to be. If they really cared about people, they'd just stop and let it happen. Jonathan O., who is your favorite U.S. president and why? I'm going to say Thomas Jefferson. And the reason I say Thomas Jefferson is because if you read Jefferson, he was actually far closer to an anarcho-capitalist than just about any other politician I can think of, or at least the Founding Fathers. Well, we have hit the 25-minute mark. Since it's just me on this, I usually let these streams go for up to an hour, but that's when I've got other guests on where we can discuss more. I've pretty much shared all my thoughts. I encourage everybody to leave a comment. But before I go, please, 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 open another window, go to my2centsvideos.com. In every single blog post I have that corresponds to my videos, you will find the links to my alternative social media platforms. In particular, BitChute. Follow me on BitChute. Library. Follow me on Library. Those are two alternative video hosting platforms where you can find all my content. I will work to get it all up on Dailymotion and BitTube, which are the other two. But right now, I can guarantee all my content is on BitChute, and Library. It's only a matter of time at this point. I think I will last longer than some of the larger YouTubers, but independent content creators are getting purged from YouTube. It is time to get on alternative platforms. Make no mistake, I'm not going anywhere. Even if they purge my channel, I will continue to make content. It will just be on platforms like BitChute and Library. And for goodness sakes, do not advocate for the government to step in and save us from social media censorship. If you do that, you will guarantee that all these companies become even more powerful, which is exactly what they want. And before I go, final question. Jonathan O. asks, worst U.S. president ever? I'm going to have to say Woodrow Wilson, given he oversaw the creation of the Federal Reserve. And with that, folks, it's never too late to start preparing. Well, it'd be better if you'd started preparing earlier, but no time like the present. Stay safe, live free, and as always, that is my 2 cents. You can take it for what it's worth.